So now that you've experienced Excel from the beginning by doing this introductory or basic tutorial, we're going to move on to part one of the main exercise. Now there's a couple of things you can do, of course, is you can download this PDF here, the complete exercise, and print it, and that will give you a printout of all the exercises in this series. And of course, by opening this document here, the final Excel file, you can see the finished work. Obviously, you don't want to start with that. The other option is to do each exercise independently, and that's what I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So first of all, let's go down to Shipments Excel 1, and of course you're going to be watching the video here, and there will be more than one video for this exercise. But what I'd like to do is open the PDF file first, and you're actually going to see the exercise as it should be. So print this off on paper so that you have it in front of you, and you'll be able to see that the answer that you get matches up with the one that's on the sheet, yes or no, and you can make adjustments. Now, to guide you through this exercise, on the second page are some notes. These are not necessarily all the answers. There's a fair bit of thinking that you have to do as well. This is more guidance, things that you can't make up, things that you need to know, just to kind of get you in the right direction. For example, what are net units, right? It'll tell you what net units are. So print this document off, have it in front of you, and what you want to do is start this Excel file here, which is the starter file, which we'll do in a minute. Now, if you want to see the final finished version, you can always click on this file and open it. What I'd like to do is right click on it, save it to my USB so that it doesn't disappear later on. It'll always be there, right? So let's open up this file here, the starter. This is what it's going to look like. So basically what I've done is I've typed in all the information that just requires typing. So that's going to save you from doing a lot of just data input, right? What you have to do is, based on the notes, fill in these missing columns. And we're going to do this step by step. So let's start. First of all, it's a company called Sencall Incorporated. Obviously, they're a manufacturing company that is selling 5 different products. So to start with, if you highlight the products on the bottom right corner, it'll tell you how many there are, which is a count of 5. So we're selling various products. So in 2015, we were responsible for shipping this many units, and this is the number of units that were rejected out of those shipments. So we would have to calculate the net. Before we do that, though, let's format these numbers so they look a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to do both columns at the same time. Highlight all of this and go up here to the comma button. You can click the comma, and you'll see 00 as decimal places. So use this button here to reduce the decimal places to 0. And alternately, you can always click on this link, drop down, and number is the same as comma. And we'll look at some of these other formats later on. So let's move on. 2015 net units. So gross minus something equals net. So if this is my gross number of units and 29,000 were rejected, then my net would be, of course, B5 minus C5. And you always want to keep that equal sign at the beginning, right? Click, and my answer is 881,000 units. Now, Excel already put the formatting in for you, so you don't have to do that. Now, take your mouse, move it over the bottom right corner, and copy down. So this is all my net units shipped for each of the products. Obviously, Galbar is my highest selling product line, and TrueFair is the smallest selling line. We could discuss what these products might be later on. Now, if somebody asks you which product being shipped is the most perishable, for example, the most prone to damages and so on, you can say, yeah, this one here at 86,000, but we also shipped a lot more units. So to kind of keep these two numbers relative, you might want to do a ratio. And a ratio is simply one number out of another number. In this case, it would be 86,000 out of 1.1 million, right? So we're going to calculate the percentage. Starting over here, the idea is the number of units rejected divided by the number of units shipped, right? So it's a ratio, one divided by the other. Think of your test mark. You get a test mark out of what the test is worth, and that in fact becomes a ratio, right? Let's say you made $100,000 and you spent 30,000 on food. The percentage would be 30% spent on food. Let's have a look. You get the answer 0.031868. And I should tell you this number is being held to a maximum of 252 decimal places. Now I'm just going to make that big and just show you exactly how many. I mean, it's a lot of decimal places. Usually it goes up to about 10 or 15. But unless you do something to it, which we'll look at later on, the number will always be that big, right? So we don't want the number to look like this. We want to make it into a percentage, and maybe let's go 1 decimal, right? You could go 2 decimals, but I think 1 decimal is okay. Two, you would go if the numbers are very small, like 0.5% or something. You can go 3 decimals if the numbers are even smaller, but I think 1 is okay for now. Let's copy this down. And don't forget, this column is way too big. So go between the E and the F, click, and just go backwards. Just stretch it back, or you can double click and it'll auto fit, right? So now we actually shipped 881,000 units of Fixo. 3.2% of those are damaged, and we sold it for $145, right? So let's highlight these cells, right? Highlight using the white plus sign. Click the dollar button, and we will get rid of the point zero zeros as well. And let's figure out the gross revenue. So the gross revenue in this case would be, let's see, the number of net units shipped times the sell price. And that would give us $127 million. So let's copy that down, make it into dollars, and let's just reduce the decimal places. Now I do want to show you something on the side, right? You could click the dollar button here, or when you go to this pop-down list, you can have a choice of currency or accounting. And people always ask, what's the difference? My preferred way is accounting, and I'll show you why, okay? So let's go down here and let's type in a number like 1.5, and let's type in a number that is like 0.5, and let's type in a 0, all right? So when you highlight these, take a look. If you do currency, you see that the dollar sign touches the number. And that could get kind of confusing, especially if you're tired on a Friday afternoon. That number might look like an 81 or 51. And the other thing is zeros appear as zeros, right? Which we don't necessarily want to see zeros in the business world. We might just want to see a dash. So I want to do the other option. Highlight these, go back to this drop down, and let's do accounting, right? Same thing, you get a dollar sign, but now the dollar signs are separated from the number. They're all lined up, and zeros appear as dashes. So in fact, that is not a dash that we typed in. That actually is a 0. So our preferred way of doing it is obviously accounting. So let me just delete these, and I'm going to reset the formatting for these cells by choosing general. Get rid of that, right? So we have some pretty good revenue in our company, and we're going to adjust that revenue for rejects. Now let's have a look. So our adjusted revenue is this. We're going to take the revenue and we're going to minus the cost of the reject. So if 29,000 rejects at $145, we would minus that from gross revenue. And I'll tell you why we're doing that. Because these units are sitting there, they were already paid for. We're going to have them in the warehouse and nobody's going to account for them. And that sends a bad signal to everybody, including managers and employees. They just produce whatever you like, doesn't matter how you ship them. If they're damaged, no penalty. We're in fact going to apply a penalty to that particular product group. So remember, there's a product manager who's responsible for all of this, and supply chain logistics people, in fact, are going to help make this happen in a more efficient way. Even human resources people are going to make sure the training is in place. So not only are we going to penalize or provide a penalty to the product manager of $145 for each unit rejected, we're also going to charge an additional 75 cents for every single unit, okay? First of all, we're going to take revenue, and from that, we're going to minus something, right? So what are we going to minus? We're going to minus the number of rejects times, bracket, the actual price plus 75 cents. So let's have a look at this, right? We're going to first of all calculate what the penalty for one unit is. It's $145 F5 plus 75 cents. Now I'm just going to delete the first part just to show you what that means, okay? Have a look. I'm going to charge a penalty of $145.75 for each reject, which is just the way it is. That's the way the company sets it up. So it sends a signal to keep your rejects low, either on the production side, the quality control side, or the shipment handling side, okay? That's my penalty. What's the penalty based on? The number of units, rejects, right? So let's go back. Let's start again. I'm going to take revenue, and from that, we're going to minus the number of units times, and we need brackets here, I'll explain in a minute, the price plus 0.75, 75 cents. Let's have a look. That's the penalty per unit. That's the number of units that we're rejecting. and we're going to minus it from there. Now we need brackets because we are doing addition, subtraction, and multiplication. And what happens in Excel is if you don't have brackets, it will do C5 times F5 first. It'll always do multiplication division first. In this case, we want the addition to be done separately, so we protect it inside brackets. Now, if you want more information on order of operations, I suggest you look at a tutorial video that's provided later on that talks about order of operations or BEDMAS. Okay, let's have a look. My adjusted revenue now, of course, is going to be less than gross revenue, is $123 million. So again, let me repeat. We took the gross revenue and we're going to apply a penalty. The penalty is $145 plus 75 cents for each unit rejected. And we took that away, right? So let's copy that down. And that is the revenue that I could actually work with, right? Now, this is my gross cost of goods sold. COGS is the cost of goods sold, the cost of actually producing these units, right? And that already has included the rejects built in. For example, here, if we were to just format these, let's have a closer look. To produce this many units, it cost me $26,200,000, and I'm just giving you that number. This is the cost of the materials that go into the unit, the raw materials, portion of heat, hydro, the taxes on the facility, the rent, possibly insurance, labor costs, direct labor costs or labor input costs that goes into making that product. And in an accounting course, you would learn everything that goes into cost of goods sold, right? So profit would be the amount of revenue we brought in, or the sales, minus the cost of goods sold, and that is always gross profit. Now think about it. From gross profit, we need to get the net profit. Net profit is what we can actually spend. So from gross profit, we take away things like our head office costs, the cost of all our managers, marketing, advertising, that sort of thing, right? So let's do this one. Gross profit is revenue minus cost of goods sold. Simple. All over the world, it's the same thing. Copy that down. And we have $97 million gross profit over $123 million revenue. And that's pretty darn good. This one's got $110 million. This has got $102 million profit. So that's actually excellent news. But the thing is, how healthy is that profit? What is my profit margin? What percentage is it? Because of course, if adjusted revenue is high, then profit's going to be high. So what's the relative percentage? We call that profit margin. Now, profit margin is simple. It is the sales or revenue minus cost of goods sold divided by the sales. Now, in this case, we already have the profit calculated, so it will be the profit divided by revenue, right? What percentage of revenue can we keep? What is our margin? So it's 97 million out of 123 million. So let's do that over here. This cell divided by this cell, and we will get 78.789. Now let's make that into a percentage, and I think again 1 decimal should do it because the numbers are quite large. Let's copy it down. And those are pretty healthy gross profit margins. Now, we don't know what our other additional costs are for head office, headquarters, and so on, central office. So our actual net profit might be a lot lower. I mean, there's a lot of managers out there who like to waste money on a lot of things that are not directly related to operations. But as far as gross profit goes, this is pretty darn good. We're running at 78%, 66%, on the low end, 64%. So you have to ask yourself, why is it that Oxtin is generating a very low profit margin versus Vexit, which is generating the highest profit margin possible? Well, it could be that this particular product requires a little bit more in terms of production, maybe more effort, more raw material, maybe it's more expensive to produce to begin with. It could be a number of factors, but I think my profit margins are pretty healthy overall. And I'll just show you a little trick. For the entire company, what is my profit margin? Let's take a look. If you highlight these numbers and look down here, it'll tell you average is 72.9% overall for profit margin, which isn't bad for a company, right? So we're going to leave it right there. Now, later on, I'm going to show you how to calculate a true profit margin as well. We're going to end this tutorial right now. Go on to the next tutorial to find out the rest of this, okay? And make sure that you put in the practice that you require.